The year is 2025. The US and China, the world's two largest economies, are locked in a bitter trade war. Tensions are higher than ever. Tariffs are flying like drunken bats out of hell. Both sides are digging in, seemingly determined to weather the storm no matter the cost. But at what point does a trade war become something far more serious? A new Cold War, perhaps, fought not with tanks and missiles, but with tariffs and trade agreements. This is the reality we face. The US, under the current administration, continues to view China's economic rise with suspicion, bordering on outright paranoia. They see China's growing technological prowess, its dominance in manufacturing, and its global ambitions as a direct threat to American economic hegemony. China, for its part, is hardly backing down. They see the US as a fading power, desperately clinging to a bygone era. They are determined to become the world's leading economic and technological superpower, and they are willing to fight for it. The question is, can anyone truly win this trade war? Or will both sides ultimately emerge weaker, their economies battered, their relationship fractured beyond repair? The US has, in recent years, unleashed a barrage of tariffs on Chinese goods. These tariffs, essentially taxes on imported products, are designed to make Chinese goods more expensive for American consumers, thereby encouraging them to buy American-made products instead. The Trump administration, in its infinite wisdom, believed this would bring back manufacturing jobs to the US and reduce the trade deficit with China. The reality, however, has proven to be far more complicated. The tariffs have targeted a wide range of Chinese products from steel and aluminum to electronics and consumer goods. The impact has been felt across multiple industries, both in the US and China. The US government argues that these tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and intellectual property. They accuse China of unfair trade practices, such as intellectual property theft, forced technology transfer, and currency manipulation. While there may be some merit to these claims, the tariffs have also had unintended consequences, hurting American businesses and consumers in the process. China, however, is not simply rolling over and accepting defeat. They have responded to the US tariffs with retaliatory tariffs of their own, targeting key American exports like soybeans, pork, and automobiles. But China's strategy goes beyond simply matching the US tariff for tariff. They are playing the long game, focusing on diversifying their economy and reducing their reliance on the US market. This involves strengthening trade ties with other countries, particularly in Europe and Southeast Asia. China is also investing heavily in its own domestic market, hoping to tap into the vast consumer potential of its 1.4 billion citizens. Furthermore, China is pouring resources into developing its own technological capabilities, particularly in areas like artificial intelligence, 5G wireless technology, and renewable energy. They aim to become a global leader in these key industries, reducing their dependence on American technology. This multi-pronged approach suggests that China is prepared for a protracted trade war. They are not simply reacting to US actions but are actively shaping their own economic destiny. Section 4. The American Battlefield. Industries and Consumers Under Fire. While the US government may claim to be fighting for American jobs and businesses, the reality is that the trade war has inflicted significant pain on many sectors of the American economy. Farmers, for example, have been hit particularly hard by Chinese retaliatory tariffs. Soybean farmers, who once relied heavily on the Chinese market, have seen their exports plummet, leading to lower prices and financial hardship. Manufacturers have also felt the pinch, as tariffs on imported steel and aluminum have driven up production costs, making it more difficult to compete with foreign rivals. And then there's the impact on American consumers. Tariffs on Chinese goods have led to higher prices for everything from electronics and appliances to clothing and toys. This has effectively acted as a tax on American consumers, particularly those with lower incomes who are less able to absorb the increased costs. The trade war has also created uncertainty and instability in the global economy, making it difficult for businesses to plan for the future. Section 5. Trump's Trade War. Legacy, Protectionism, and its Discontents. The roots of the current trade war can be traced back to the Trump administration's America First policy, which placed a heavy emphasis on protectionism and economic nationalism. Trump, who had long railed against unfair trade deals and China's economic practices, made good on his campaign promises by imposing tariffs on Chinese goods shortly after taking office. His actions were met with swift retaliation from China, setting off a tit-for-tat escalation that has continued to this day. While Trump argued that his tough stance on trade was necessary to protect American jobs and interests, critics argued that his policies were counterproductive and ultimately harmful to the U.S. economy. They pointed out that tariffs are essentially a tax on American consumers and businesses, and that they would lead to higher prices, job losses, and slower economic growth. Moreover, they argued that Trump's confrontational approach to trade diplomacy had alienated U.S. allies and damaged America's standing in the world. Section 6. The Global Chessboard, Shifting Alliances, and Economic Power. The U.S.-China trade war is not simply a bilateral dispute between two economic superpowers. It is also a reflection of broader geopolitical shifts and a struggle for global economic dominance. China's rise as an economic powerhouse has challenged the U.S.'s long-held position as the world's sole superpower. This has created anxiety and uncertainty in Washington, leading to a more confrontational approach towards China. The trade war has also exposed the limitations of the existing global trading system, which is struggling to cope with the complexities of the 21st century economy. The World Trade Organization, once the arbiter of international trade disputes, has been sidelined by the U.S. and China, who have increasingly resorted to unilateral actions and bilateral agreements. This has led to calls for reform of the WTO and a more rules-based system for managing global trade. Section 7. Conclusion, a Pyrrhic victory. So, who is winning the US-China trade war? The answer, as with most things in life, is complicated. In the short term, both sides are undoubtedly feeling the pain. The trade war has disrupted global supply chains, increased costs for businesses and consumers, and slowed economic growth. However, in the long term, it is still too early to say who will emerge victorious. The US may be able to force China to make some concessions on trade, but it is unlikely to derail China's economic rise or prevent it from becoming a global technological leader. China, for its part, may be able to weather the storm of US tariffs and emerge from the trade war with a more diversified economy and a stronger position in the global order. Ultimately, the outcome of the trade war will depend on a variety of factors, including the political will of both sides, the resilience of their respective economies, and the evolution of the global trading system. One thing is certain, there will be no clear winners in this trade war, only degrees of economic and geopolitical pain.